Welcome to the January 2019 meeting of the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency. As is our custom, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll move on to the first item, which is approval of the agenda. So anybody have any changes or?
Nope, I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 2, public comment on matters not on the agenda. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on matters not to be brought up on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, which is approval of our December 12th, 2018 minutes.
I'll move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded for approval of the minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 4, report out on a closed session.
The board did meet in closed session this morning to confer with legal counsel on 2 items. One, a piece of existing litigation, Baxter versus West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, and another anticipated litigation with regard to an ACOM change request. And no action was taken with regard to either item.
Thank you. Item 5, review of monthly revenue and expenses.
Good morning, members of the board. This report summarizes the revenue and expenses for the month of November of 2018. So starting with 870, we have a beginning balance of 8.2 million. There's no revenue for that month, and the expenses were approximately about 14,000, making the ending cash position for 870 to 8.1 million. With Fund 870, we had a starting balance of a negative 15.5 million. We spent about 5.9 million, with majority of that coming from the Southport construction project. And with the ending cash position for 871, it was negative 21.4 million. And looking at the year-to-date position, along with the 35 million advanced state funding, the combined cash position for 870 and 871 was 22 million. Are there any questions that you'd like me to elaborate over?
Questions, anyone? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Consent agenda, 1, 2, 3, 4 items on the consent agenda today. Any questions?
I noticed we had a revised attachment for item number 8, I believe, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new resolution, yeah.
So it's a revised resolution?
I'll move consent with, if there's no one wanting to pull an item, with that addition or change.
Okay. And I will second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as amended, item number 8. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carry. Southport project update. Is there?
Not much to update this month.
Understood. So thank you. Then let's move on to the monthly WSAFCA project updates.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. I'll go over just a couple of items from the progress report or the monthly report, and the majority of it we'll probably spend on looking forward on the federal project. Staff is working with regard to Southport project, staff is working with our consultant GEI to finalize the emissions for the Yellowstone Air Quality Management District. We may be bringing an item to the board next month to look at potential increase in costs for exceeding the emissions limits for 2018. Also, all of the cultural resource work has been completed. The sites are in place, and we're working with the Corps and our consultants to close out through the 106 process. including a final inventory and disposition of the material that's been collected over the course of the project. You'll notice in your report, there's a new project listed, the Southport Restoration Project. That's looking forward to the plantings that will occur later this year in the offset area. And so we're currently under design. The 90% design package is under review. The package is out with DWR right now for review and comment. Once we receive those comments, we plan to move to the 100% design, anticipating a bid later in the next couple of months, and then hopefully bring an item back to you for consideration in April to award the contract for the restoration contractor. And then the board will hopefully recall, by approval, we have previous board approval, we have 2 nurseries that are currently propagating all the plant material that will be used with that contractor. And then skipping ahead to the Deepwater Ship Channel East Drainage Repair Project, it's essentially complete, and the notice of completion is being prepared now for filing with the county. So that there has, just for the board's awareness, there in just a couple small localized areas, there's been some ponding adjacent to the backyard of 1 or 2 property owners along the project corridor. So the homeowners have made us aware. We've gone out and taken a look and communicated with the property owners, and we'll get back there in the spring once the conditions are better and provide a little bit of material to get that drain a little better and keep the water away from their back fence. So just in case you hear about it. On the federal project, so as the board's aware, we received the $400,000, well, I guess we didn't receive, the Corps received $400,000 in PED funding to start the pre-construction engineering and design activities. The board just took an action today so that we can execute our portion of the design agreement with the Corps. The state is taking an informational item to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board next Friday, and they'll be following that up with an action item in February to be able to execute their portion as the other non-federal sponsor for that design agreement. And then once that is completed, then it'll go back to the Corps for final execution, hopefully sometime in February. In the meantime, staff put out a request for, not proposal, but a request for qualifications for a variety of engineering services. Those responses are due next Friday, the 25th of January. We'll put together a team to review that package, and we anticipate bringing an item to the board next month to approve a list of qualified professional services that we can then use to advance design and other engineering services to support implementation of the federal project and the first increment. The idea is that once we've got the list established, if you will, we're going to work with the Corps on developing the first scope of work for the design package, and then we'll put a request for some of the appropriate professional engineering services. We'll ask for a proposal from them, kind of a short list, if you will, and then we'll evaluate that and then bring an item back to the board for award of a design contract and other support services.
And
So
and
more to
Greg,
come
is
on
this,
that.
is this for that one section of the bypass levee?
Yeah,
project in particular?
that's the intended first
Okay.
increment for design. And depending on cash flow and depending on additional core funding, if there is any, and during design, we may need to stay focused on the design of that first increment along the yellow bypass. But it's also possible that we may look at advancing some of the real estate for Sac River North, for example, or some geotechnical explorations that would, start to lay the foundation for the next increment after the yellow bypass. But that will really depend on, additional funding and what our cash position is and things like that.
Okay.
I think the board is aware that the current plan is for WSAFCA along with the state to advance design. And you'll notice, or if you did notice, I'll point out that the design agreement, although the Corps only has received $400,000, we set up the design agreement to cover the anticipated full amount for design of $4 million. Consequently, our 50% share with the state would be $2 million. That's why we asked for the appropriation of $2 million. So that should help us avoid having to go back and amend that agreement. If the Corps does receive additional funds, then they can just participate farther and help alleviate some of the costs that we're carrying. But the plan still is for the non-federal sponsors to lead design up to about the 65% design milestone. In the meantime, or in parallel with that, we're continuing our lobbying effort to receive additional funding. Ultimately, we want the Corps to receive the full balance of the design funding, and obviously we want to move forward and get a New Start construction designation and receive construction funding for that first increment. That's estimated right at about $20 million. So as it stands right now, there's a couple advocacy trips being planned to D.C. The mayor will be back in January next week. I don't believe anybody's in session, and I don't believe there's any meetings scheduled relative to flood, but in February, I'll be joining the mayor back in D.C., and we're currently setting up meetings now, which should include headquarters, ASA, OMB, our congressional delegation, as well as some of the staff on the appropriations committees. There is also an opportunity in March to attend the Legislative Summit that's being put on by the National Waterways Conference, for which we are now members. One of the key items in that particular summit is the R.D. James, the Assistant Secretary of the Army, is one of the guest speakers, along with a Major General for Army Corps Headquarters. So there may be an opportunity to meet with those gentlemen and reacquaint them or remind them about our, West Sacramento and what it is we're doing, and to continue to thank them for the support and look forward for their support in the future. Then you also note there that there was a pilot program that was authorized by WRDA 2014, and we refer to it as the Section 1043 pilot project. And that is a program that has yet to be successful or be implemented. However, there is a renewed push by this administration, OMB, and the ASA's office for the Corps to have a success project. Up to this point, nobody's been able to take advantage of this pilot program, which is essentially the Corps providing funding to a non-federal sponsor, where the Corps provides their share, the federal share of the non-federal project. Let me try that again. The Corps provides their share of the federal project, and then the non-federal sponsor then carries it out. So we're exploring that as an option that we may be able to utilize to help get us to New Start and then and get into construction. But we're not going to deviate from the other traditional paths to secure funding. But we were asked by the district if we would be interested in pursuing that as a possibility. We said yes, and it's my understanding that that information has been transmitted up the chain at the Corps, that West Sacramento may be a partner that could participate in that program.
Is this, if this came to fruition, would it be for the entire federal project, or could it be, broken down, or do you not know?
It's not clear. The initial feedback was it would be for the entire project. Checking in with Corps Counsel and getting their opinion of the current statute, it says, well, we think this could be broken down into a separable element and then used.
Yeah.
It would be absolutely fantastic if we could participate in this program and get the full funding. I wouldn't necessarily bank on that, but anything that gets us to and over the New Start construction hurdle would be advantageous, of course. There is one sort of looming hurdle that, at least at this point, doesn't look like, unless there's a legislative change, that anybody could take advantage of the program, and that is by June of 2019, anybody that's participating in this program must have initiated their project. Now, whether that means started construction or executed a construction funding agreement, that's not clear, but June 2019 is right around the corner. And typically the way that the two times that I've seen it, projects listed as eligible to take advantage of this program was through the normal funding process. So for example, Sutter Butte, I think it was in the 2018 work plan, was designated eligible to participate in this project. And so they were awarded their construction funding with a footnote. They may be able to participate in this program. They subsequently were deemed not to be eligible to participate, but nevertheless, that's how it looks like projects would be designated. So, through the normal budgeting process, if we were eligible, we wouldn't find out till, September, October, November timeframe. So there would need to be some legislative fix to remove that June 2019 requirement.
So this was a sunset clause in the original WRDA action, huh?
Yeah, and the program was modified slightly in WRDA 2018, but that sort of hard deadline of June 2019 was not removed. We're trying to figure out, maybe why that was overlooked, or was it intentional or just an oversight, but up to this point, it's been very difficult for non-federal sponsors to take advantage of this program. So there is a comment period that's open right now, and the Corps is receiving comments on implementation guidelines, generally speaking. The deadline is February 12th. The Corps has yet to issue implementation guidelines for the 1043 program since WRDA 2014, but there has been a significant amount of pressure being placed on the Corps by OMB and the ASA to get those guidelines out, so we do expect that they will issue them later this year. So we may have two bites at the apple to provide comments. First, generally speaking, what we'd like to see in the guidelines, and then once the guidelines are issued, a second chance to provide comments before they're finalized. So we're keeping an eye on that, and we plan to issue comments or send comments before the February 12th deadline.
So, so the partial federal government shutdown is not affecting Army Corps or anything?
No,
Anything that's, okay,
those appropriations bills were passed, so the Corps is fully funded.
okay.
So there's no shutdown for them or furloughs. As of today, I don't know that it sort of remains to be seen whether or not when we do our trips back to DC and engage with our folks we're going to lobby with, I don't know whether the 1043 program and its applicability or our applicability to it would be something that we would want to hit front and center, but it's certainly something we're thinking about depending on how things go. It may be part of that conversation. And I think that about sums it up. I'd be happy to answer any other questions your board has.
Okay, any questions? Keep on trucking. Thank you, Greg. Item 12, director's comments. Anyone have
None.
any comments? Not on the agenda? Neither do I, so item 13, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.